So this piece of legislation allows us to join a class action lawsuit across the whole country. All 10 provinces and territories are involved in this, and we're suing a number of different companies that are responsible for the opioid crisis because they knowingly, willingly put very dangerous drugs in the hands of Albertans and even those who are supposed to trust, the institutions, the regulatory bodies, and through our physicians and the healthcare system, being told it was safe, that there were no consequences, that this is a safe supply of opioids and it's non-addictive. It's all a lie. And what we want to do in this court case is say that there are consequences for that, and we don't want to see this happen ever again.
The federal government has broken the bail system through the Bill C-75. It makes it virtually impossible to keep anybody in what is known as pretrial custody. They have put forward Bill C-48. We've had to take other measures, but the reality is this, and I've been very public about this is not a secret. Yeah. We are less safe in Canada because of the Liberal NDP alliance in Ottawa.
We're also ready and willing to intervene in cases involving the federal gun grab and confiscation and the buyback program as well. We'll continue to assess each and every case on its merits and assess whether or not we're going to intervene, but we've certainly done so before. We're going to continue to look at that in the future, and we will be ready to challenge whatever policies don't work for Albertans each and every step of the way.
Adam Sills here for Rebel News, and as you can see, we are on location at the BMO Centre here in Calgary, Alberta, for the United Conservative Party's annual general meeting. Over 3,600 have gathered, with lots of key policies being discussed and addressed. The decisions made inside this building will affect the direction of this government, this UCP government, moving forward. In this particular report, we're going to be bringing you some exclusive interviews focused on issues like firearms rights, crime, and the progressive and successful approach that this government has taken to addictions recovery. Without further ado, let's jump to those interviews now.
We have 3,792 delegates registered at this UCP AGM. And that, my friends, makes this the largest provincial party AGM in Alberta's 118-year history. And it may well be the largest one in Canadian history. Well done, all of you. Thank you so much for being here.
Are we going to see the same level of defense, whether it be Rebecca Schultz or Brian Jean or Danielle Smith? They've been sort of unapologetic that they will not stand for the carbon tax. They won't allow certain areas to get special carve-outs. Are we going to see the same level of commitment protecting firearms rights?
You're going to see an absolute level of commitment, just on like every other ministry that we had, just like every other approach that we've had, just like every other department that we've had. There is absolutely a complete appetite to making sure that gun owners in this province are protected. That is from me, that is from the ministry, that is from the Chief Firearms Officer. We're going to leverage everything we can to protect them in the same way that other ministers are doing. This is a position that we believe is unfounded, not well grounded in theory or in logic, and we're going to continue to protect our gun owners every step of the way. The illegal guns are coming from either south of the border or they're coming from our two east and west borders. What we're doing with the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Services is we're shoring up the security services in those areas. What we're not doing is targeting law-abiding gun owners. That's the most important thing that I think I want to stress to your viewers today. We are going to take a hardline approach when it comes to people who are bringing in illegal guns and committing serious and violent crimes. And we've done that by shoring up our Crown Prosecution Service, introducing 100 new police officers, and shoring up our support services when it comes to our sheriffs as well. There are a number of other things that we have down the pipe that will come very shortly here, but right now I think that the focus is going to be on serious and violent offenders, making sure that they're prosecuted to the fullest extent, making sure that our police and our Crown prosecutors are fully and adequately supported, and making sure that our focus and our time is not wasted on those individuals that are law-abiding, gun-carrying Albertans.
The work that this government is doing on Bill 3 to sort of have some accountability metrics in relation to the opioid crisis.
Right, so these are amendments brought into a 2019 piece of legislation that we passed in the House unanimously. What it allows us to do, and what I'm doing with this bill, is I'm going to recuperate funds from those who are responsible, pharmaceutical industry, consultants, distributors, manufacturers of opioids, high-power pharmaceutical-grade opioids that they supplied into our communities en masse, starting in the early 90s. And what this did is it created a market for addiction introduction of heroin-like product, twice as powerful as heroin, not just in the major city centers of LA, New York, Toronto, Vancouver, but now every rural community. Every single community across our country and our province now had the supply, so-called safe supply, of addictive drugs. It started in the 1990s and it peaked sometime in the mid-2010s. And so what we're doing is we're saying this is something that we as Albertans bore a cost on, both in terms of the consequences of what it took as a human toll, but also the financial cost in our healthcare system. And it was done maliciously and intentionally by these pharmaceutical companies and the industry that is around it. So this is the first step in getting that back. And every single red cent that I get out of this is going back into the Alberta recovery model. So this piece of legislation allows us to join a class action lawsuit across the whole country. All 10 provinces and territories are involved in this, and we're suing a number of different companies that are responsible for the opioid crisis because they knowingly, willingly put very dangerous drugs in the hands of Albertans and even those who are supposed to trust, the institutions, the regulatory bodies, and through our physicians and the healthcare system, being told it was safe, that there were no consequences, that this is a safe supply of opioids and it's non-addictive. It's all a lie. And what we want to do in this court case is say that there are consequences for that, and we don't want to see this happen ever again.
But what steps are being taken to address sort of violence, escalating crime in course, particularly in large cities, but in rural areas as well?
The reality is this: the federal government has broken the bail system through the Bill C-75. It makes it virtually impossible to keep anybody in what is known as pretrial custody. They have put forward Bill C-48, in my opinion, not in a expeditious way that, the way that not just people in Alberta, but right across Canada are seeing violent repeat criminal offenders preying on communities. That being said, we've had to take other measures. Other measures meaning we provided extra authorities to sheriffs. We've made sure that we've hired more police officers in both Calgary and Edmonton. Visible presence matters. Of course, Minister Amory is doing what he can from a Crown prosecutor's perspective. But the reality is this, and I've been very public about this is not a secret. Yeah. We are less safe in Canada because of the Liberal NDP alliance in Ottawa. So we are going to do what we can within our powers in Alberta to try to keep Albertans safe. And I would say that what we are doing is an example again for the rest of Canada. Myself and my friends and colleagues who are kind of the architects behind this, we are immensely humble at the way not just other provinces, but other jurisdictions around the world have indicated that this is actually the path forward with dealing with the opioid crisis. I look at Dr. Keith Humphreys as an example. Dr. Keith Humphreys is a psychiatrist, actually the dean of psychiatry at Stanford University. He is world renowned as probably one of the experts on addictions medicine around the world, and he has indicated that the recovery-oriented system of care, which was created right here in Alberta, is the path forward with dealing with this crisis.
We have the best chief firearm officer and the chief firearms office in the country. We have a breadth of experience. We're working together to strengthen and develop those policies. We're enabling that office to take on a predominant role when it comes to dealing with our law-abiding gun owners, and they're doing a wonderful job, and we're going to continue to support them in that way. We're also ready and willing to intervene in cases involving the federal gun grab and confiscation and the buyback program as well. We'll continue to assess each and every case on its merits and assess whether or not we're going to intervene, but we've certainly done so before. We're going to continue to look at that in the future, and we will be ready to challenge whatever policies don't work for Albertans each and every step of the way. We're going to make sure that our jurisdiction is protected and that we protect those people and that very safe and popular activity in this province. I think that's full stop where we're at. Alberta has the highest per capita rate of PAL and RPAL ownership in the entire country. And these are the people that I'm focused on. I want to make sure that we develop policies and strategies that protect our law-abiding gun owners. And what we're seeing from our federal government, our federal counterparts, are a number of different policies that simply do not make sense. Whether you look at the carbon tax fiasco or whether you look at the gun grab laws that you mentioned, they simply don't make sense. The federal government is not ready to implement them. That's exactly why they've delayed the process process by an additional 2 years. What that tells me is that this is premature, this is not well thought out, this is not ready for public consumption. What we're doing, though, is we're proactively taking a number of different steps to shore up our ability to protect law-abiding gun owners.
Our UCP caucus will never waver in defending the rights and livelihoods of the people of Alberta, and we will thwart every effort of the current federal government to do so until that day, hopefully in the not too distant future, when we have a government in Ottawa that understands the concepts of nation building, the Constitution, and empowering provinces to achieve our goals and aspirations. And until that day comes, we will not give the current group an inch. We will never compromise the future of Alberta.
Is there a specific policy or action item you think this government is working on that's really drawing people out? As we've seen, record-setting attendance at this AGM, record-setting fundraising. What do you think is sort of the key issues that people here are focused on?
Well, I think that affordability is a huge factor that many Albertans are struggling with right now. I think rising crime rates are another one that is certainly important. I think protecting the jurisdiction of Alberta and making sure that the federal government doesn't overreach into this province is very important to the people that are here. And historically, this is the largest AGM in the history of Alberta, and I think probably in the history of Canada as well. And I'm very proud of that fact because it shows that the Conservative movement is incredibly strong. It shows that that common sense approach is well-grounded and reasoned in its position. And I think that we're going to see some wonderful things come out of this year's AGM.
I don't think there's anything Canadian, I don't think there's anything compassionate about leaving the most vulnerable of our society on the streets at minus 40 with a drug-induced schizophrenia that is, speedballing methamphetamine and, methamphetamine and fentanyl on the daily in an attempt to try and fill a craving that they have that is physiologically dependent because of their addiction. Leaving more vulnerable out there in that state is so un-Canadian, so un-Albertan and uncompassionate. The Alberta model says we have these trumped up, cooked up studies from the 1990s of how, these opioids were safe then. They weren't. We have trumped up college professors, community college professors now pushing the same kind of narrative. We know the truth of the matter. We have the world expert on the North America opioid crisis, Dr. Keith Humphreys out of Stanford, who wrote the Stanford Lancet Commission, who has been an advisor to multiple presidents, George Bush, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, all of whom have turned to him and currently are looking at advice for him. He says what's happening in Alberta is the most exciting thing in treating addiction anywhere in the world. We're not just going to follow what some community college professor has pushed for their crazy ideology to have the solution to an addiction crisis be more drugs to those addicts. Instead, we're going to do what's best for them. We're going to put caring for Albertans first, and we're going to get them out of the cycle of addiction and get them into recovery.
The Premier and I have indicated on many occasions that we're looking for good governance and stability, right? But we are also not going to just be pushovers for the federal government, and we are going to make sure that we assert ourselves in a way that we get a fair deal, right? And this is why, years ago, this Fair Deal panel was created, and there was recommendations that came out of that. And, I have full confidence in not just Premier Smith, but the entire cabinet team and caucus team to make sure that we get a fair deal for Albertans right across this country.
Well, it was certainly encouraging to hear from a number of ministers and MLAs that they are indeed taking on violent crime, cleaning up the city streets, defending firearms rights, and continuing their compassionate approach to helping people struggling with addiction. For more coverage on incredible stories like these, particularly on the firearms rights, go to handsofourguns.ca. And to learn more about efforts to correct and address the violent crime that is taking place in cities like Calgary, just behind me here, you can go to fixourcities.com. As always, I want to thank you all so much for tuning in. For Rebel News, I'm Adam Sose.